Session 3 and 4 taught by Dr. Reams in Black in 1977. This is Tape 3 Side B.
Hiatal hernia, burning around the cardiac sphincter. The cardiac sphincter, if you were to, let me see if I can find a place to stick a stomach in here. Okay, if you've got a stomach like this is going up to the place where you put food in. That's right here, and this is the stomach, and it's full of juice and all of this good stuff. Well, anyway, you find people who get burning right down in here, just underneath their sternum, just a constant burning down in there. Well, it's usually a irritated cardiac valve, and you can see a lot of characteristic problems with the upper GI tract when you see that particular congestion around there. Recently, a person came to me, and anyway, I examined them, looked at their eyes and stuff like that. They were a friend. They said that they had just been in the hospital and that they'd had a lower GI series and a sigmoidoscopic examination because of the fact that they had a lot of stomach gas. Now, I don't know how long that sigmoidoscope was, but by my count, it would have had to have been 30 feet long, and oh, I bet that's smart. But anyway, when I looked at the person's eyes, there was this typical stomach ring of congested vessels right next to that limbus, and I knew they'd went in from the wrong end. Okay? So, you'll begin to see this. Now, I want you to note this. The greater the number of splits you see around this area, in other words, little vessels that are splitting for some reason or another, the greater the number of splits that you see in this area or in the eye in general, the greater the number of splits, the greater the degree of system toxicity. And if you get an eye in which you start seeing this, better not draw so many of those things because I'm going to have to erase them all. But anyway, if you see an eye that's really got a significant number of splits in it, if you see more than 12 splits, 12 forks, 12 Ys in a given eye, or in other words 24 per pair, you want to note that that system is really depleted. It's really in a highly depleted state. That you're going to have a very, very low stress, very, very low energy input diet if you're going to get these people to respond. Now, let me ask you something. A young baby boy that's a year old, can he become a father? Well, yeah, 20 years later. Come on, I knew that. Okay, but is it possible for a year-old baby to make love and father a child? It is not. Why not? Has his sex glands not maturated to the point where it is possible for him to evolve effective sperm that are living sperm that can punch the corona and, in fact, induce pregnancy? Why doesn't he have live sperm? Well, as the body matures, its energy levels increase. Remember, a baby boy has an energy of approximately 10 at birth, reserve energy. A baby girl has approximately 8. And as they mature, their energy becomes greater, and as their energy becomes greater, they begin to utilize heavier and heavier and heavier elements in their construction. And so as they eventually get up into the 54, for instance, like such as, manganese, as they start getting up in there, and as their body begins utilizing manganese, and as their body begins utilizing the energies from manganese, this begins to trigger, along with other elements, begins to trigger maturation, and the next thing you know, now they have a descended testicles, they have the ability to be sexually stimulated, and they have the ability to ejaculate and the sperm alive. So as the baby gets more and more energy, as he goes through successive steps, he will go through certain maturation phases. Okay? And as he goes through these maturation phases, he begins to utilize more and more complex chemical energies from his minerals to bring about this maturation. Well, when you see a person who is in a very, very highly depleted state, to go out there and feed him a bunch of heavy mineral supplementations is just going to be less than worthless because of the fact that he's not going to have the energy to utilize them anyway. You have to go back sometimes on these highly depleted people. You have to go back to the point where that you are literally almost feeding them like you'd feed a newborn child, because that's how much energy they've got. They can assimilate food that a newborn child could assimilate. And so even though there's a lot of preservatives in some baby food, sometimes it's necessary to take these people and put them on baby food because of the fact that it's very, very palatable. It's already pre-chewed. In some instances, it's almost pre-digested. And it's the only way they're going to get any energy. And of course, how are you going to know if they're that far up? Well, the eyes will tell you, and then of course you can map them on the chart that I gave you before. And we'll have some more of those run off later on in the week, so you can take one home with you that's not all marked up or something, providing that the copy machine over there doesn't go to pieces. But just remember that the greater the number of splits, the greater the depletion state is on the body, can we turn right around and make the statement that the body is becoming precancerous? Okay? Could in fact even be there, but we're not interested in cancer. We're interested in the body's internal harmony. If we in fact reestablish good internal harmony, if it's God's will, He'll take care of the cancer. So we don't have to worry about healing anything. All we have to do is worry about getting those numbers in line. Okay, now I got to erase this mess. And we'll go on to the next pattern that we want to begin to study. Laverne, are you taking notes? Yes, back there. Where's this now, partner? Yes. Yes, indeed it would, my good man, because, you see, a 76-year-old person, we have computed, would have 36% of the reserve energy that he had at age 20. Okay, if his numbers were good at 76 and his numbers were good at 20. So what you're doing is, when you're charting him on here, you're looking at the percentage of energy he has relative to what total energy he should have at that age. So if you plotted a young child a year old in a B range, you would say that he's about 25%, rough average, about 25% less than what optimum would be for him at that age and that energy range. You see? And we've already computed all of those things for you, so as soon as you know that we get the clearance and everything else, why, it's just a matter of just printing them. Oh, you can still apply it clear on down, because remember at 10 you've got a half X, okay, and going on down, you can go ahead and apply it right off of the bat. But just remember that you have a growth in energies from 10, which is the reserve energy of a child at birth, a male child at birth, to, if his numbers are in range, a potential 100% utilization of energy at age 20. And you can begin to just back down and get a rough idea of where they should be. And of course, as I said, we have already computed those things out for you. In fact, the matter is, we have also been busy putting together the physiological symptomatology that you would normally see in a child from 1 to 6, I believe, or 1 to 5, and then 5 to 12, and then 12 to 20. No, what is it? 12? Yeah, 12 to 20. Or is it 12 to 20 and 20 to 30. And we've got the ones from 30 up already done. We're working on the other ones now. To the point is that from our studies and going back through all of the records that were down at the retreat and various other things, we have just graphed every symptomatology that these people expressed that they had. Now on the young child, way down there, that gets pretty hard because you have to go by what the mother says or the father says. You know, well, they're irritable, they don't sleep well, they seem tired, they're always fussy, their stomach's upset. And you plot these things, and then you just start graphing them in based on the numbers, just like on the exact same graph that I gave you, and then you watch for where 30 or 40 or 50 of these children begin to group. If you get a significant grouping in that particular area, you can go back and say, okay, this is fine. Now we know that a big percentage of these children having this particular symptomatology group in this particular pattern. That doesn't mean all of them is going to be there, but a significant percentage of them is, so that you can begin to watch for that. Just like we have found that almost all of the arthritics stay in mid-sugar ranges, above 2 and below 5.5. Okay, now there's other things that, if time permits, I'll go into on the arthritic later on this week and show you some pH ranges to watch and some ureas to watch, heights and various other things. But we've plotted the arthritic, and we know where to start looking for him. When the numbers get into that particular area, he'll start exhibiting his arthritic symptomatology. So it's just a matter of just simple plotting. It would be super, super good to get some of you guys involved with doing a lot of that, because right now only one man, to the best of my knowledge, is doing the biggest percentage of it. Okay, let's go on now, where we were at. Okay, now let's see if we've got for lack of a better word, a broad or a band of vessels that seem to be grouping around the eye. Not just those vessels that are grouped very, very close to the limbus, but now we've got a band of vessels that are grouping around the eye. Now this band begins to extend outward. Okay, now we've talked about the fact that on the vessels in close to the limbus, that they have to touch on the 6, 7, 18, 19, 36, 37, 48, and 49 range. But now we're getting a band that's beginning to move out to take up a significant portion of zone A on your eye chart. It can include all of zone A, but in most instances it'll include, anywhere from a full third to a half of zone A. Here's this congestion of vessels around there. Sometimes you'll have a feeder vessel coming in, and it'll split and go around there, and another feeder may come in from another direction. But, Oh boy. Okay, set tight and I'll get you a bunch of eye charts over. Okay, where is Bob Chaplick back at the back? Okay, would you check and see if we brought a whole bunch of eye charts? Yeah, maybe, but Chaplick brought us 1,000 to use up this week. Have you? Okay, bring over, how many people's in here? Do you have any idea? How many people's in here that, total? About 120? 122? Okay, bring 122 and then we'll pass them out. Now they're my chart. So anyway, when you begin to see that congestion around there, then you want to begin to suspicion and to investigate the possibility of a lot of congestion in the thorax in general. Now this may be both in and outside of the lungs, in and around the heart. When you see that band, you want to watch for congestion or stress in the thorax in general. And as I said, it can be either in or around the lungs. In other words, this band very frequently shows up in pleurisy as an example of a congestion in the thorax that's not in the lung itself, though it can be. Yeah, I meant that too. It can also be in and around the heart. In other words, you may find that they have got a lot of lymphatic congestion around the heart. They may have a pericarditis or some other area of irritation on the heart. I've even found this band in former athletes whose hearts are starting to go fatty on them. And I've kept good close watch on some of these people because of the fact that physiologically right now I'm running in negative numbers. And anyway, I've kind of kept track of some of these other people and have judged my own degree of deterioration by them. So I've even seen in cases where the heart is getting fatty and the lungs are pretty emphysematous, that you can begin to see this band developing. As I say, it may feed from the periphery. In other words, you may have feeder vessels coming in and then splitting around that eye. So you may see it feed from several different places around the periphery. Where?
Is that going to end there?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. That'll be when they'll be around the eyes, both of them, and in both instances it indicates no. In other words, it's general thorax congestion when you see that band all the way around that eye, either eye. It will, there won't be any time in which you see the vessels just literally being in for end to end. The person said, is it completely around the eye? And you won't see a case where the vessels just lay end to end to end to end to end like you have braided a rope around the eye. But you will see them grouped in around that eye to the point where you'll know that that's where the congestion is centering, and you'll pick up on that and begin to question them relative to short-windedness or various other factors. And then naturally you're going to look at the numbers as well. Now you want to see something, and we showed you one of these, and I told you that this person had a lot of problems when I showed you the slides when we were having show and tell relative to the eye numbers. Remember me showing you the guy that had had an eye that looked like this. Remember that eye? Remember I told you that he had all kinds of problems that we'd talk about later? Now can you begin to understand him? Okay? You can look at that particular pattern crossing that eye, and you can tell that he has problems with digestion, with the upper GI tract, that he has problems with oxygenation, kidney stress, liver toxicity. He's beginning to build up sludge in his system, picking up a lot of autoimmune toxicity from the bowel, and that he is having problem oxygenating the tissues, that the heart, especially the left side of the heart, is involved. The lungs are showing some congestion, and probably at this particular state in the game, he's probably got some either fluid or scarring occurring in the lungs, and probably damage by this time to the valves of the heart, especially the left side of the heart. So remember, if some of you can't go back quite that far, but I made a comment about the fact that when we showed that slide one time, or some of the other guys, that this guy really had problems, okay? And of course you guys picked up on the fact he had problems because he had 1,000 vessels going around that area, but there is a bigger interpretation than that, than just the fact that he had super gobs of vessels in that area. Okay, let's go on now, because we've got another thing we have to worry about now. Now we have to get a little bit more specific. This can be in either eye. Okay, this can be in either eye, and I'll erase my drawing here pretty quick. It's getting pretty cruddy. But anyway, the problem that you want to take into consideration here is that it may be congestion or worse in the female breast when you begin to see these vessels line up in this band around the eye. Now, here's the areas that you want to watch for your congestion in. 5:35 and 8:38 on your chart. These are the areas that you want to start watching the congestion build in, and it's getting more advanced if you see the congestion extending to 1747 and 2050 in both eyes. Okay, well now, the breast will record in the eye you're seeing it in. Okay, so if you're looking at the left eye, you're looking at the left breast. So if you begin to see a congestion of vessels right in this area, on both sides of that eye, just like that, if you begin to see a congestion of vessels on both sides of that eye in those areas, okay, for those that need the eye chart, that don't have a copy of the eye chart showing the zones and everything, raise your hands and no, that you've got it, but did not get it because of the fact that I'm in class with you. They're running off some, or hunting for Bob Chaplick. Just those that have not gotten a hold of a copy that need one just right now, so they can see. And those guys will take care of you guys. Okay? Okay, well they're passing them out, and we've got 1,000 of them, so you guys can have a whole handful of them just as soon as we find Bob Chaplick. John English isn't back there, is he? Okay. Now, my drawing is getting pretty bad, so I want to go up to another drawing, and we will continue ever onward. What? Yeah, that's the breast congestion. And if you see the 538, 838, or 535, 838, that shows mild congestion in the area. If it extends to the point where you're also including 1747 and 2050, then the congestion is more advanced. Okay? Can be very advanced. Well, they have to be recordable vessels. You know, all of this thing we're talking about is it's got to be something that we can see, and not this mild, light, general orangey stuff that comes just from air pollution, rubbing the eyes, not using enough Visine or whatever. Okay, in other words, they have to be vessels that we would normally apply our concentration to.
Mm-hmm. Your tape from December, and you record a vessel.
Well, that's you listen to there's nothing I can do for you there, because that's a 6-hour presentation of how we go through there. We can try to find someone who's got the notes. It's all written out. The people who have been under me in either a Class 1 or a Class 2 since December, or since January the 1st, have had those things updated to them. For those of you who are behind, I just didn't believe that any of them were still out there that would stroll in this late after this many months from last fall when Doc was teaching, and I didn't bring anything out preparatory for that. Well, looks like there's, from what you said, there looks like there's about 7 or 8 of them in here at least, because their hands were up when they wanted eye charts. But no, I can't, time-wise, I just can't spend 6 hours with you. But possibly, if you will give your name and address to Lynn or to Jerry or to Eleanor or sometime during the day, maybe I can see that you get a copy of that update. The people in November and December, that when I saw them in Chattanooga and out here, well, I had to give them about 60-some additional pages. And, of course, that's the agreement, that all of them that I have taught, that anything that I come up with or anything else is to keep them updated. Now, I did not teach you initially, but I'll update you anyway. Okay? I've got the stuff. As long as I've got it, you're more than welcome to it. So you be sure, if there's any of you in that category, where I give your name and address specifically to Dave and or Lynn or Eleanor, and or if Jerry Friedenstein is here or Tess is here, and see that it gets to me, and I'll try my best to update you. Now, let's go on. Now, let's go into the next factor. The equator band is missing. The equator band is missing, except for heavy congestion in the 1 and 12 region of one or both eyes. In other words, here's what you're seeing. The equator band is missing. The equator band is missing. But you do have heavy congestion in the 1 and 12 regions of both eyes or either eye. We're still on general things. By the way, we're on number G. And for some reason, I don't know why it worked out that way, there is exactly Z patterns that fit in both eyes. So the alphabet worked out fine. I did not have to change it. Okay? So anyway, now, if you see that congestion pattern in children, it indicates a poor general state of health. In children, it indicates a poor general state of health. Now, a child that has these areas indicated, even a fairly young baby that has these areas indicated, will respond slower in most instances to dietary improvement than will a child that has not developed these areas. When you see them beginning to develop, when you begin to see them develop, especially in children, it is the start of kidney stress beginning to show up in their system. When you see this begin to build, especially in children, it is the start of kidney stress beginning to build up. And you remember now that before toxicities, even from a toxic liver, can begin to build up in your system, you have to overstress the kidneys. As long as the adrenals and the kidneys function, they can stand a great deal of stress from the rest of the body. But when you fatigue them, then you begin to see this beginning to develop. And over a period of time, this band, if you watch it, will extend right on outward toward the limbus. So when you see it just in the corners, especially in children, it's the beginning of kidney stress. I really like this thing on this microphone. Where'd Will go? Will, this is pretty nice. It's like having your own Nerf ball. And I won't discuss what some cite. Now, the next factor is general redness. General redness of the eye that cannot be explained by rubbing, dust, or other irritations. General eye redness that cannot be, and this is just a myriad of fine vessels, just, in other words, it's 1 to 60 finely patterned that I talked to you about. And I showed you, or Jerry showed you, or Lynn showed you in show and tell those weeks what that would look like when you saw it on the eye. Okay, this is what it is. And anyway, when you see that pattern, which is a pattern in reality, the whole eye is patterned, then you want to not only note that there is general vitamin C stress, or the beginning of a collagen disease, but also note that you have adrenal fatigue. Adrenal fatigue. And we'll talk about these adrenals a little bit later on, because they're pretty important little things for being no bigger than the end of your thumb. No, that's adrenal stress. The entire adrenal gland, including the cortex and medulla, is beginning to show stress and is beginning to become imbalanced in its 56 or 57 functions. Okay? It takes in the whole gland, my good man. Okay? By the way, how have you been? Thank you. Thank you. That's nice. Okay, let's go on to the next pattern then. Now here we're going to put another factor in here, tying us back to the numbers. Ureas below 12, on the next pattern up, ureas below 12, and lots of I numbers. Ureas below 12 and lots of I numbers. In other words, you're talking about 30 or more areas involved in each eye. Lots of I numbers. Just vessels scooting everywhere. Ureas below 12 and lots of I numbers. Okay, suspicion a potassium deficiency. You wondered where it came from. There it is. Now you also know you're going to have some concomitant vitamin C stress. If you've got that many I numbers, you know that you're going to be seeing some vitamin C stress and also some adrenal stress. And if you didn't have any adrenal stress, how would you develop the potassium deficiency? Okay, you're losing potassium. Now we'll talk later how the thyroid ties into that and a few other things when we get further out into the patterns. But just watch your ureas below 12 and lots of I numbers, suspicion a potassium deficiency, and also begin to note that you're going to see evidence of nervous system, that includes both central nervous system and peripheral nervous system, imbalance. This is the person that's going to very, very frequently exhibit hypoglycemic-like symptomatology when you're going to know from the test that their sugar isn't anywhere near low enough to be a true hypoglycemic. Run onto a few of them already? Yes, indeed. Everything that I discussed with you on the various different types of hypoglycemia, whether it be the slow drop, the fast drop, the extreme drop, the flat curve, the relative hypoglycemic, even the low end of the dysinsulism swing, you'll see symptomatology that will match this, various different symptoms. You may find them easily exhausted, easily fatigued, which also is an example of adrenal stress and also of pituitary stress. But anyway, you'll begin to see them, nervous, tremors, hands and feet are easily go to sleep. You may note, that they have mental problems, mental cloudiness, depression, bawl a lot, cry a lot, easily irritated, and stuff of this particular nature. And, and they joke about these people seeing red, but for those of you who are aware of what I'm talking about, these people do in fact. Okay? They do in fact see red. Okay? What they're doing is tuning in. They're turning their vision inward to the point they're tuning into their own aura. And when you talk to a person being green with envy, that's no joke. Or a person being blue over a love affair that has failed, that's no joke. That is no joke. Those terms are aptly applied. Going on to J, which is the letter of my first name. All right, in J, below 8 ureas, and just totally red eyes. Every eye number you can think of is there. Below 8 ureas and totally red eyes. Okay, suspicion of possible 220. Brain tumor, or brain congestion, or lack of circulation, or lack of cerebrospinal fluid circulation to the brain. All of these things can produce this thing. It need not be a true brain tumor, but remember, brain tissue responds to pressure. A brain tumor, such as a meningioma, that Dr. Reams refers to as a Dead Sea tumor, okay, or whether it be a meningioma in plaque, these grow along the surface of the brain substance, producing pressure. And it is the pressure that produces the aberrant effects in their personality, etc. So you want to remember that jammed respiratory centers in the skull or improper cerebrospinal fluid flow around the brain substance can in fact produce pressure that for all practical purposes may mimic a brain tumor because it's producing pressure just exactly the same way that a tumorous mass would produce pressure, but it is not a tumor. Okay? So the 220. Okay? 220 is the medical term for a brain tumor. It is the insurance usage, and Doc likes to use it, and so that's why we pass it on. Now, you have to watch for some other factors here. You have to watch for intracranial pressure, some other things that you want to begin to put some time in. Woo! Hello, Doc. You want to begin to put some time and effort into watching for intracranial pressure. Watch for bulging eyes. You want to watch for frequent headaches. You want to look for emotional and personality changes. Start watching for changes in selected movements. Okay, like for instance that one leg may start to drift on him, or that he may lose some activity in a given hand, or that he may be able to do everything just fine reaching out in front of him, but he can't reach anything off of a shelf. So watch for changes in selected movements, and also watch for personality changes, and even things such as loss of balance and coordination. These are things that you want to double check when in fact you're looking at that particular pattern, because that is probably one of the most hideous things you can tell a human being, that the possibility of a 220 exists. So you want to know what you're talking about before you tell someone that. I can think of only one brain lesion that would be more hideous than a brain tumor. Who can tell me what it would be? The dog tapeworm. Okay, it forms a mother cyst in the brain which may have literally thousands of small cysts all capable of hatching into a worm. And it's, as far as I'm concerned, that would be probably the most hideous brain lesion to be involved with, because of the fact that it is a very, 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 very terrible one. Huh? No, not really. Doc says that it's very, very difficult to pick up a spinal cord tumor unless you can identify from their symptomatology where the problem may be. Okay? Now, basically speaking, the cerebral spinal flow of the spinal cord is connected with the cerebral spinal flow of the brain vault, because of the fact that they both enter into eventually the cisterna magnum. However, one thing that can produce tumor-like symptomatology relative to the spinal cord many times in which no tumor is existing is a dural port mechanism congestion. And there is a dural port at every nerve emission off of the spine that literally allows excessive cerebral spinal fluid flow to be reabsorbed back into the venous system. And sometimes, due to swelling of the nerve, or spurring in the particular area, or osseous misalignment, it's got to be pretty drastic, but it can happen. You can literally get a congestion at that dural port that begins to depress the nerve flow out of that area. The nerve begins to go cold, and you can begin to get evidence that there is, in fact, a brainstem lesion at that level, when in reality it's not. But the tumor, as far as the numbers going, picking up a tumor in the spinal cord is pretty difficult, and that would be something you'd have to zero in on way up in the later classes, where you can begin to get some ideas on it. I have had several people with brain cord tumors, okay, but I was never, even from the eye, other than from the iris, I was never able, from the sclera, for instance, to pick up any indication that where they would lay. Though you can pick up a concussion from the sclera. You know what to look for, and I'll show you in a little bit. Okay, now remember that a bulging eye on a human being may not have anything to do at all with a brain tumor or even any brain lesion that is, for all practical purposes, inside the cranial vault. Because remember now that some people have large eyes because it is a hereditary problem. Some people have large eyes because of the fact that they have hereditary metabolism problems in which they carry high sugars all the time. Some people have bulging eyes because of the fact that they have a chronic glaucoma. Some kidney diseases will cause the eyes to almost bulge right out of the head. You may also have thyroid problems. Graves' disease is an example in which the eye may become extremely prominent. And last but not least, it is possible to have what they call a schwannoma, which is a small tumor that grows on the fibrous sheath of the optic nerve that can literally punch the eyeball right out of the socket. You probably remember a TV personality, and I can't think of her name now. Duncan was her last name, I believe. What was her name? Sandy Duncan. Cute little girl. She had a problem in which a schwannoma got behind her eye, and she lost the eye in the process, because it is a cancer. It is a cancer. Okay, now let's go on and to the K factor. If you've got really, really badly reddened eyes in a female, especially if she's carrying high ureas, if you've got badly reddened eyes in a female, especially if she's carrying high ureas, you've also got to take into consideration that she may have, along with the things we've discussed earlier, such as vitamin C stress, adrenal stress or exhaustion, and various other factors, you also have to take into consideration that it may include the female organs themselves. Oh, okay. I'll mention that. I didn't know that. Anyway, he says that if the body chemistry, Dr. Reams just mentioned that if the body chemistry all of a sudden starts accepting vitamin A, that the eyes will redden up very, very rapidly within just a matter of a couple of hours, become bloodshot. He says not to worry about it. It's a temporary situation and it's not serious. So there's something that I had not known relative to them.
Also black rice.
Is that also vitamin A? Okay. He also mentioned that sometimes when vitamin A is acceptable, that for a short period of time you'll almost get like a black ring. In other words, the upper and lower eye will start to show darkened areas around it. Okay? Okay, now when you see these badly reddened eyes on a female, you will find them very, very frequently associated with women who are on the pill or who have an irritative IUD inserted. Now, as we've already told you before, adrenal stress can be a factor. Now, let me explain to you right now, because this is a wonderful time to do this, what the symptomatology, what to expect in adrenal stress, why it shows up, what it has to do with the numbers, and I think that this will answer some questions that a number of you have had with some of your people. Okay? Now, what are some of the things that will identify adrenal stress? Yes, indeed, exhaustion. Exhaustion or fatigue. Very definitely. Poor stamina falls right in there. Some people, if they pace themselves properly, can undergo quite a bit of adrenal stress, but if they attempt to do anything in bursts, then their stamina just falls immediately. Another factor on adrenal stress will be either high salts or erratic salts on your tests. Is there two R's in erratic? Yeah. Is it English or American? Do we put the O on edema or do we leave it off? Now another factor, it will be short-windedness. You have to watch for that. Now another factor will be that is easy for them to catch colds. Okay? It's easy for them to develop, problems like sinusitis, bronchial congestion, colds, simple summer flus, things of this nature. So they tend to have a respiratory weakness. Okay? They tend to have an allergic susceptibility. They tend to have an allergic susceptibility. Now this includes hay fever, sneezing. Now get this, hives. Their body will break out in hives from one end to the other. They'll be covered with them. Okay? This also includes runny nose, dermatitises, things of this particular nature. Now,